Welcome to this explainer. Today, we are jumping right into a really fascinating conceptual dialogue between a modern, highly skeptical youth and a senior monk. They're trying to get to the bottom of the true nature of fasting. We're going to bridge the gap between ancient scriptural wisdom and cutting-edge clinical research to figure out what actually happens to our bodies and our minds when we simply stop eating.
So our skeptic youth kicks things off with a totally modern dilemma. We hear about fasting all the time now, right? It's often pitched as the ultimate physical biohack, a quick way to drop weight or reboot your metabolism. The youth is basically asking, is skipping meals just some primitive survival mechanism that we've repurposed for modern health, or is there something much, much deeper going on here?
Well, the monk completely flips the script. He reveals that regulating your hunger isn't just about managing your biology. It's actually an attentional and moral diagnostic tool. In this traditional view, the human body is literally a laboratory. By consciously restricting our most basic instinctual appetites, we actually begin to refine the spirit. It's a bridge to something greater.
Let's move into our first section, fasting across world religions, the Global Liturgy of Hunger. Because as we'll see, this is absolutely a global human phenomenon.
It's truly amazing how vastly different theologies use hunger as a shared, collective exercise. In Islam, the dawn-to-dusk fast during Ramadan is designed to develop Taqwa, or God consciousness. In Jainism, the strict abstinence of Parusha is a powerful tool for nonviolence and destroying karma. For Christians, the 40 days of Lent cultivate a sense of sacrifice and solidarity with the poor. And in Judaism, the 25-hour fast of Yom Kippur is deeply tied to teshuvah, which means atonement and moral repair.
The Buddhist approach, though, gives us a slightly different angle, the middle way. After the Buddha realized that extreme self-starvation wasn't the answer, monks started eating only before noon. It's a mild, daily fast meant to cultivate constant mindfulness. The Dalai Lama actually teaches that fasting has to be balanced with moderation, reminding us that any fast without kindness and compassion is, frankly, just incomplete.
Moving on to Section 2, Saints and Global Thinkers, where we look at the universal philosophy of discipline. The monk introduces our youth to some historical giants who saw fasting as a profound technology for the mind.
The real secret here is balance. Swami Vivekananda hit the nail on the head when he said fasting is incredible for strengthening the human will, but he was quick to warn against extremes. The body is an instrument, and your dietary discipline should support your personal growth, not break your physical frame down.
And this isn't just an Eastern religious idea. It lines up perfectly with Aristotle's concept of the golden mean, proving it's a universal rule of temperance. Aristotle argued that true virtue sits right in the middle, between the extremes of gluttony on one side and extreme punishing asceticism on the other. Fasting always has to be guided by practical wisdom.
This concept of temperance extends directly to the mind too. Think about Albert Einstein's advice to stay away from negative people. It's essentially a modern metaphor for an information fast. Just as we restrict physical food to cleanse the body, we have to actively fast from negative inputs and toxic thoughts to keep our minds clear and sharp.
Taking that mental clarity a step further, let's think about vibrational purity. Since your fasting body is mostly water, experiments by researchers like Masaru Emoto suggest that water molecules might actually change structure in response to sound and mantras. So think of your fasting body as a finely tuned instrument. When you empty it of heavy foods, it becomes a highly sensitive vessel, incredibly receptive to positive energy like prayer or Reiki.
All right, Section 3, the great health debate. Medicinal benefits versus clinical risks. The youth, still a bit skeptical, brings up the modern scientific perspective. Is this ancient practice actually safe for us medically?
We're looking at a real medical clash here. On one side, fasting can trigger incredible metabolic healing. We're talking deep detox, longevity, mental clarity, and improved metabolism. But on the flip side, if done incorrectly, there are severe clinical risks. You can experience extreme weakness, serious nutrient deficiencies, and even harm your immune system. Now, for the biohackers, the absolute holy grail of all this is autophagy. It's a cellular self-repair process that actually won a Nobel Prize in 2016. When you deprive your body of nutrients, it flips a switch and goes into cleanup mode, clearing out damaged cells and proteins. It's an amazing internal reset. But medical institutions strongly warn against jumping into it carelessly.
And this is exactly why our youth skepticism is completely valid. Look at extended fasts like the 9-day Navratri festival. Clinical labs see real issues when people don't plan their nutrition.
You can get iron deficiency that leads to severe fatigue, massive drops in vitamin B12 causing nerve issues, and dangerous electrolyte imbalances that trigger severe muscle cramps. And for diabetics or pregnant women, fasting requires extreme expert caution.
So the takeaway here is that ancient statecraft and modern doctors totally agree. Disciplined moderation is your key to strength. Chanakya, the ancient master of Indian statecraft, said that self-control is the root of strength. He knew that a ruler who loses control to extreme indulgence or extreme depletion is going to fail. Discipline should guide you, not destroy your health.
Section 4. Prayer during the fast. When you take away food, you create this huge physical and temporal void in your day. So, how exactly are we supposed to fill it?
The monk explains that simply starving yourself is essentially useless without some form of devotion. Across the globe, this empty space is filled with spiritual vibration. You've got Hindus chanting the Vishnu Sahasranama, Muslims reciting the Quran, Christians praying the Rosary, and Jains offering prayers of forgiveness. The physical fast is really just the container. The prayer is the actual work.
And beyond spoken prayer, there's also the profound practice of mana, or intentional silence. A lot of fasting protocols include mana as a way to conserve all that vital physical energy you'd normally spend talking. Instead, you redirect that power of speech inward, having a deep internal conversation with yourself.
This brings us to Section 5, Anna, Shuti, and Consciousness, which is the purity of food and mind. This is arguably the deepest philosophical point of their entire conversation.
The ancient scriptures are incredibly straightforward about this connection. The Chandogya Upanishad literally says that when your food is pure, your internal nature becomes pure. There's a great vernacular saying, as is the food, so is the mind. Basically, what we choose to consume fundamentally alters our internal cognitive reality.
According to Upanishadic thinkers, digestion is literal alchemy. The grossest, heaviest part of the food is rejected as physical waste. The middle density part is assimilated into your flesh and muscle. But here's the wild part. The absolute subtlest essence of that food actually rises up to nourish and build your mind, or manas, sort of like butter rising to the top when you churn curd.
This is exactly why traditions like the Vaishnava and Jain paths avoid heavy tamasic foods like onion, garlic, and meat. They believe these foods produce lethargic or aggressive thoughts. By eating light, Sattvic foods and offering them to the divine first, the goal is to build a mind that is crystal clear, compassionate, and totally free from agitation.
But wait, the monk drops a major reality check right here. You could have a flawless, pure diet for 20 years and still be cruel, greedy, or arrogant. Abstaining from certain foods doesn't automatically guarantee moral transformation. Your consciousness is heavily shaped by your daily thoughts, the company you keep, and your inner discipline. True purity means aligning all of your actions with Dharma.
And with that, the youth finally gets it. Fasting is a universal discipline. When it's balanced with real wisdom, it's a powerful medicine for the physical body and a vibrant mantra for the soul. It's a bridge to a higher state of being. So it leaves us with a great question to ask ourselves. The next time you feel hunger, are you simply starving your body, or are you finally feeding your mind? Thanks so much for joining this explainer. Please like, comment, and subscribe to learn more with us next time.